Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Unbound. I'm Beth Curry. Before we start this chapter, I just want to give you a content warning. This episode is about losing my dad. It's about the night that the police officers knocked on our door at 3 a.m., just like, what happens in the movies. And you don't really expect it to happen to you, especially when it comes to a parent, if there hasn't been like a tragic accident or anything like that. I also write about kind of piecing together what really happened and about my mom spending an entire day alone with him, not understanding why he wouldn't wake up. This was it was a hard chapter to write, and it's called The Last Goodbye. I was 7 or 8 when death first visited my thoughts, not as a reality, but as a concept that suddenly seemed all too possible. I knew death by then. My cousin killed in a car accident when I was around 5. I remember one night vividly. My parents had gone out, leaving us with a babysitter. I sat on the couch in front of our plate glass window, tears streaming down my face, absolutely convinced they would get in a car crash and die. The babysitter tried to reassure me, but I remained fixed at that window, watching the darkened street, waiting for headlights that would signal their safe return. The fear gripped me, sending me into tears night after night. Sometimes Mom would come in, perch on the edge of my bed, and stroke my hair as I struggled to explain this overwhelming dread. "Everyone has to go sometime, sweetheart," she'd say softly, "but not for a very, very long time." Her reassurances eventually worked their magic. The nighttime panic subsided, replaced by the normal rhythms of childhood. The fear retreated to that quiet place where uncomfortable truths wait until we're ready to face them again. Decades passed, I grew up, experienced more death, had a son of my own, built a life that included regular dinners and events with my parents, holiday gatherings, impromptu visits. Death remained a distant concept, something that happened to other families, not mine. Even when Dad was diagnosed with cancer, even through the treatments and recoveries, I maintained an unshakable belief that he would simply continue as he always had, steady, reliable, eternal. I should have seen the signs that summer. Looking back now, they were scattered everywhere like breadcrumbs, leading to a truth I refused to see. Dad, ever practical, quietly putting his affairs in order without alarming anyone. The way he invited us over more frequently, how he bragged that he consolidated their bills, switched to a smaller cable package, and asked me to help him sell their piano. "You can have the barbecue," he told us casually one afternoon. "Crew should have my golf clubs," he mentioned another day, as if merely thinking aloud. He said he likely wouldn't be golfing ever again. It made sense to me then. He was so tied up in Mom now. But alongside these whispers of preparation came contradictory signals. He was growing his hair back after chemo. He'd gained weight. He moved with more energy than he had in months. "Everything looks great," he reported after his scan, relaying what he claimed his oncologist had told him. We all breathed relief, believing the crisis had passed. The possibility of losing him receded once more to that distant horizon where uncomfortable truths wait. The last time I saw him, I was rushing to a meeting. I darted out their door without our customary hug, the one ritual I never ever skipped. Because somewhere deep down, that 8-year-old girl still lived in me, still understood the fragility of it all. But that day, just that once, I forgot. I didn't know it would be the last time. The knock came at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, that dreaded middle of the night pounding that everyone fears, just like in the movies. Brian heard it first, came to get me, and I stumbled to consciousness, confused and alarmed. When I opened the door to find police officers standing there, the world suddenly tilted. Their voices, measured and gentle, delivering words that made no sense. "I'm sorry to inform you that your father has passed away." I repeatedly asked them, what happened to my dad? Because usually the police don't come unless something unthinkable has happened. I thought maybe he had an incident behind the wheel of the car and crashed, or maybe he had fallen again. That summer he did fall outside his friend's variety store and hit the back of his head. Said he was fine though. They just said they didn't know what happened and that I was to call the police sergeant at the OPP. The next moments exist in my memory as disjointed fragments. Thanking the officers, closing the door, another call from the OPP in Norfolk, Brian holding me as reality crashed down, waking crew, trying to reach my aunt and my sister, the drive that should have been easy but became an odyssey of detours and construction. My mind still struggling to comprehend why police officers had been the ones to tell me my dad was gone. When we finally arrived, an OPP officer who had been sitting with Mom all night met us at the door. Inside, Mom sat in her chair, a blanket across her lap, facing the couch where Dad sat, covered with his blanket. Despite her failing eyesight, she had positioned herself to keep vigil. While Brian spoke with the officer, I knelt beside Mom, taking her hand in mine. She was quiet, confused, a stark contrast to her usually talkative self. The reality began to settle like sediment in still water. Dad was gone. Really gone. I moved to the other chair closer to Dad and stared from the side of my eyes at my dad, utterly bewildered. I took it all in, his arm casually resting on the arm of the couch where it always did. His retirement watch perfectly in place and still ticking away time. His casual loafers he wore around the house, still on his feet. I looked at his clothes. The last things he put on the day he left this world. Did he know? These simple everyday things I once overlooked now screamed with the echo of his presence. My sister and aunt still didn't even know, and I was sitting here taking in my new reality. My dad was just gone. Once the initial flurry of activity subsided, the necessary calls made, the immediate decisions handled, my investigative mind took over, seeking answers where none had been offered. This is how I cope, how I make sense of senselessness. I build timelines, examine evidence, create order from chaos. It's the forensic investigator in me. The coroner had pronounced Dad's death on September 14th. But as I moved through their house, noticing details with the heightened awareness grief brings, I began to piece together a different story. Their bed was turned down on both sides, but Dad was fully dressed in his daytime clothes. The coffee mugs were set out for morning brew, his nightly ritual. The computer was off, the TV was silent, the cat's food bowl was empty, the litter box untouched. Most telling were their medication packages meticulously organized by the pharmacist with labels for each time of day, a timeline written in pills. What emerged was a reality far more heartbreaking than we'd initially understood. I believe Dad woke up on September 13th feeling unwell. He got dressed while Mom still slept. He took his morning medication but never made the coffee. Instead, he sat on the couch, perhaps turning on the TV, perhaps not. And there, in his familiar spot with his arm resting on the armrest, he died. Not on a Thursday, as the official record would state, but Wednesday morning. Mom, with her limited vision and advancing dementia, likely woke later and thought he was sleeping. She spent an entire day alone with him, unable to understand why he wouldn't wake up, why he hadn't prepared her meals or given her medication. No food, no insulin, no conversation. Did she speak to him, waiting for responses that never came? Did she grow confused when night fell again and he hadn't moved? Did she feel abandoned, frightened, unsure what to do in a house grown suddenly silent, except for her own voice? Somehow, after what must have been hours of confusion, my sweet mama found the presence of mind to check for a pulse. Somehow, she remembered how to call 911. Somehow, despite her cognitive decline, she understood enough to summon help. By the time that help arrived, Dad had been gone for hours. The thought of Mom sitting there all that time, uncertain, unaided, unmedicated, breaks my heart in ways I still struggle to articulate. Her confusion must have been profound, her fear palpable. Did she simply wait, believing he would eventually rise from what she thought was sleep? I'll never know. Later, we learned the truth from his pharmacist, who had said he had been given the option to start treatment again. The "everything looks great" report was fiction. Dad had likely received a death sentence during that appointment following up on his scan, one he chose to bear alone rather than burden his family. His meltdown 3 weeks before he died, so out of character for a man who prided himself on stoic dependability, suddenly made terrible sense. The pressure of keeping up appearances while knowing his time was limited must have been crushing. I wish he had told us. I wish I had hugged him that last day. I wish I had called when the thought crossed my mind. I wish I hadn't ignored the signs my subconscious was trying to show me. On the morning he likely died, I was buying groceries when an unexpected morning glory caught my eye in my garden, bold purple against green leaves. I even photographed it, recording the timestamp, 10:55 a.m. By 4:17 that afternoon, its petals had closed, never to open again. This wasn't the first time this had happened, a sudden, unexpected flower appearing in my garden when someone close to me was about to die, but my conscious mind wasn't ready to receive the message. While shopping, I bought Dad a birthday card, though his birthday was a month away. Not one of the sappy ones he secretly loved, but one I knew would touch him nonetheless. Why that day of all days? Why did I suddenly feel compelled to prepare for a birthday I didn't realize he would never see? Throughout that day, thoughts on my parents kept surfacing. I considered calling but got busy with other tasks. I told myself there would be time later. There's always time later, until suddenly there isn't. My last communication with Dad was an email exchange earlier that week. His final message included comments about local police activity and a sarcastic remark about Justin Trudeau. If you knew Dave, you'd understand how perfectly this encapsulated his presence, his essence, practical, observant, politically opinionated to the end. And all the police presence on that Thursday, officers at our house, officers closing so many roads on the way to their house, officers with Mum, officers helping us navigate the administrative aftermath of unexpected death, would have secretly pleased him. Dad had immense respect for law enforcement. His great uncle was once an officer, and then police commissioner for the OPP. The fuss made for him would have made him uncomfortable yet proud, a contradiction he would have acknowledged with a slight nod and the ghost of a smile. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to hold his hand as he transitioned from this life to whatever comes next. I didn't get to tell him one more time that I loved him. But I did get to see how, even in her confusion, Mum found the strength to do what needed to be done. I got to witness how love bleeds through cognitive decline. How her devotion to him remained intact. I got to understand in a profoundly painful way that the bonds we forge in life don't simply vanish with death. They transform, becoming part of who we are, how we love, what we carry forward. The little girl who once lay awake, terrified of losing her parents, now understands that fear was both justified and beside the point. Loss, when it comes, is every bit as devastating as that child imagined. But love, the love that made that loss so fearsome, remains, undimmed by absence, unmarred by grief. In the end, that's the paradox we all must face. The things we fear losing are precisely the things that remain with us, even after they're gone. I find comfort knowing Dad is in heaven now, reunited with the family who went before him. I imagine him on the most perfect golf course, free from pain, surrounded by all the cats he cherished and protected throughout his life. In those quiet moments when I feel most alone, I sense him watching over me, another guardian angel added to my constellation of protectors above. His physical absence leaves an ache, but his spiritual presence brings a peace that goes beyond understanding. So I just want to apologize for kind of choking up a little bit there. I know I don't have to apologize. I don't feel I have to apologize, but I apologize. Reading this chapter now, it almost feels like it was written by another version of me. One who was standing right in the middle of the storm at the time, trying to make sense of something that still, doesn't really make sense. So a year later, a year after writing the chapter, it's been 2 years since losing Dad. I can still feel all of that, but there's like a different kind of peace sitting alongside it now, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say it's acceptance exactly. I'm not sure that we ever fully accept a loss like that, but like maybe understanding. Yeah, I think understanding. What stands out to me now isn't just the shock or the details of that night, but the softness that kind of still manages to live in these moments. The way my mom, even confusion reached for him. The way my dad quietly prepared for what was coming, protecting us the only way he knew how. I guess there's kind of a strange comfort in realizing, that love was holding all of it together, even when it looked like everything was falling apart. I think that if I've learned anything since then, it's that grief doesn't have a finish line. It just softens. I mean, I knew this on some level before. I've lost a lot of really important people to me. Yeah, it softens. It becomes something that you live with, not really so much as a shadow, but more of like a companion, I guess, that reminds you, what mattered so much. It broke you to lose it. I don't even know if I'm making sense. I also think a lot about that moment with the morning glory too, how something so small can feel like a message, kind of a little bridge between worlds. I used to doubt those signs. For a long period, I held so much faith in signs, and then I kind of let that go and stopped kind of believing in it, but, not anymore. When you lose someone you love that deeply, the world gets quieter in a way that lets you hear things differently. And so you notice things. You start to realize that connection doesn't stop, when the body does. I know he's all around me. I ask for signs, and sometimes within minutes, maybe within hours, but definitely less than 24 hours, I always get a sign. I get the sign I've asked for. It's wild to me. If you're listening to this and you've lost someone, maybe you can relate to that pull, that ache and the comfort kind of all tangled together. I think the best thing we can do for ourselves is kind of let grief be what it is, right? Let it visit when it needs to. But also let it remind us, that the love is still there. It's just kind of wearing a different shape. So I'm just going to move on to questions. From Margaret. Margaret says, in the Through the Fog chapter, you talked about therapeutic fibbing, joining their reality instead of correcting them. How do you decide in the moment? It feels like lying, and that goes against everything I was taught. Yeah, I've said the same thing. It feels like lying. And, anyway, I struggled with it too. It felt dishonest. It felt like I was betraying mom, not telling her the truth, but correcting her served me more than it ever served her. So, when she asks where Dave is and I say he's dead, her heart breaks. I mean, it doesn't so much anymore because she's kind of held on to that fact that he's gone now. So she's just confirming it now instead of asking where he is. But that truth of telling her he's dead didn't help her, because she would just forget it in 10 minutes or 2 minutes and ask again. And so all that really does is kind of reopen that wound and maybe cause repeated trauma. Saying now he's not here or he's playing golf. Yes, that's not factually accurate, but it's emotionally true. My dad loved golf. In a very real sense, I believe he is playing golf somewhere. And I think that gives her peace instead of pain. So thanks for the question, Margaret. That's the only question I have today for this show. So thank you for listening to The Last Goodbye. It's one of those stories that kind of keeps teaching me something new every time I revisit it. If it touched something in you, I hope it was a reminder that even in the hardest endings, love does have a way of continuing on, because it does. If you've lost someone suddenly, if you're carrying the weight of words unsaid or hugs not given, like I still do, I see you. You can send your stories, comments, questions, anything to unboundwithbethcurry@gmail.com. You can join the Facebook group if you want to support the show. All the information is in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit authorbethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.